Celtics Stuff Live.
Welcome to Celtics Stuff Live on the CLNS Media Network, the leading online provider of audio and video coverage for the Boston Celtics. I'm your host, Justin Poulin. Joining me, as always, John Duke. We've got 2 preseason games in the books. We got a chance to see the Celtics face the Charlotte Hornets, and really, first quarter of basketball of the year was outstanding, on fire, shooting the lights out, even though they really weren't playing all that fluidly at the same time. And they wind up dropping that one. Obviously, the second half, a lot of bench guys, a lot of weird rotations, a lot of weird combinations. Can never take these too seriously. Pretty good second game as well, entertaining. Terry Rozier is just a highlight for me from both games. And then, of course, the Scrubbers wind up doing a pretty good job to close out game 2. And a guy like Dozier, was it PJ Dozier, who spent most of his time in the G League last year, winds up making some pretty crazy hustle plays. I don't even want to limit it to just that final play. A lot of hustle plays to close out game 2. So lots to take from. We finally have some basketball, and John and I are here to talk about all of it with you all.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it's been a promising introduction. I mean, there's some things that obviously still need a lot more work, and there's a lot of rust and a lot of, just things not quite hitting yet, but you see the potential there. You see where things are headed. And yeah, I thought that the Scrubbers, as you wanted to call them, what I'm going to call the third
Scrubbers. That's great.
So, all right. So listen, no, we got the first. I don't think people fully settled in what the first 5 is. The BWA, that's what Mook's got. I am putting forward, this is my thing here, okay? I think it's the Yabu Tang Clan. I think that's what that third string is going to
be. The Yabu Tang Clan.
Right?
That's hilarious. Right? It's hilarious because he's walking around, as Tommy and Mike said, he's walking around with just an enormous amount of confidence, like he belongs there, but he's just like not even in the rotation, right? And so it's so funny because you're right, he's the leader of the Yabu Tang Clan. So you can go ahead and have it, but I'm going to call him the Scrubbers.
You can.
And I'm going to leave Yabu out of that because I do think he's got some. I think he's probably better than the group he's hanging with.
Well, I think what I would say though, and I thought you're right. Dozier had a great, obviously a couple of really important plays, but Robert Williams and Yabu. I mean, Yabu, I never would have thought our first, our opening to our first show after 2 seasons at preseason games would be talking about the third string, but that's Celtics Stuff Live, baby, right? Yabu, he's showing through 2 games that he's starting to learn his role. He's starting to understand how to fit into the NBA system, how to fit into the Celtics, what the Celtics need. He's using his ample posterior to get guys on his back and finish over the top of them. And, I thought he's what he's doing. I thought last year he really didn't know what to do. Now I can see maybe he's going to start from going way inside and work his way back out. Because we know he has the potential to work on the perimeter and work, in space. But I think right now where they need him is that big butt right there on the bottom. And then on the other hand, you got Boo Butt. That's Robert Williams, right? We talked about him when we did the draft show. Boo Butt, makes the big block, really, that helps to seal the win and gives it up to Yabu for the lay-in.
He's just like Yabu last year, to your point. He's kind of lost, doesn't really exactly know where to be, but there's enough that he understands the pick and roll, so you see him running it. I mean, there was a Jaylen Brown lob to him that didn't wind up working out because it wasn't quite high enough, although Jaylen should probably learn that Boo-Butt can really get off the ground. Like, he could have skied that alley-oop a lot more and got it over the defender, I think, and Williams would have been able to finish it just on his sheer athleticism. That's just them all getting to know each other and all that. But that he is getting by. He's getting by on some pretty incredible athletic ability. I think he's able to alter some shots. I think we might still see him do his stints in Maine like we expected, but I also wouldn't be surprised. What we want to see is how game one started out with just a litany. What was it? 37 points in the first quarter. And, they can pretty easily, if they keep up this style and pace of play, be putting up 120 a night. You know that the defense is going to come along, especially as the rotations work themselves out. I think they'll still be higher scoring games. I'm not expecting them to hold anybody to 80 if they're scoring 120 plus. It's just not the way that they're playing right now. But if they can stake up some big leads like that, maybe Williams does get a chance to spend a decent amount of time on the floor. He's really the kind of guy that they were looking for in a youth, and they kind of got Tice, and he's a bit of a rim runner himself. But I think Williams is that project that hopefully, if he can stay healthy and he can keep his head in the game around all these veterans, couldn't have come to a better place like we talked about with Jeff Goodman on draft night. If that all happens, and I don't think his locker is next to Al Horford's, but if he can kind of pull those pieces together, it's not hard to see him really fitting into sort of the youth movement aspect of this team, which would be Terry Rozier and Marcus Smart and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and having, a rim protector, a shot altering big man who can also probably not shoot 3-pointers. And I don't think we should expect that, but he can be in this up tempo offense, and that would make him effective, even without being able to knock down crazy amounts of threes.
Right. I mean, yeah, the rim running, the Clint Capella model is really a good one for him to follow here, and know that there's no expectations. And the team knows that they can be successful if Capella is the model you're going after. They can be successful with shooters and scorers all around him, and him just setting screens and rim running and creating those seams, kind of north-south seams in the offensive end. I think that he's really got a chance. He has shown some flashes to show what he can do offensively in terms of passing. I think he's a little bit more than just this raw player who's just completely out of his element. I mean, this isn't a guy who came from Well,
look, Kendrick Perkins was drafted at the same spot, right?
Yeah.
Now, yes, that was out of high school and not 2 years of college, but Kendrick was pretty lost right out of the gate.
He was
pretty lost.
Yeah.
And there's the fundamentals are here. I don't think he's used to the pace of the game, and I also don't think he fully understands what his role is in the offense. And even Mike said this when all the scrubbas came out, was, this could be a little ugly for a little bit because this is a freewheeling offense. There's a lot of reads, a lot of reacting, and there's not a lot of chemistry and experience on this group. So we know that there's going to be some struggles. And it was surprising that they actually did kind of put together a little bit of a hustle effort and find ways to work together. Even Robert Williams received a pass that I think even Jaylen Brown would have tried to finish. And instead he dropped it off to Yabu, or was it Ojale? I can't remember, but he dropped it off. And I remember saying, I think it was Yabu because I think he finished at the rim. But either way, I remember saying to myself, I'm like, that's really a very good sign. Not that he couldn't have finished that and didn't want to, but just I'm going to pass this one off. We're going to get the easier bucket. We're going to make the extra pass. And this is going to be what I think the coach wants me to do. And you can even go back to when Tice, I believe, hit that outlet pass to Rozier, and then he just dropped it behind his back to Tatum for the flush. Oh. Those are the kinds of things we need to see more of from this team, because that's how you solve these chemistry issues around people getting minutes and getting involved.
That's absolutely right. And it's that contagion that infected the 86 team with Bill Walton's, his presence there, and just things go into a different level with how you share the ball. And it becomes more about wanting to share, and it builds and it builds and it becomes bigger than what the team is. And I think one thing Tommy's talked about both on Friday night and then on Sunday is the fact that there's a lot of guys right now, young players, who are trying to come back after working really hard this summer and show, hey, look what I've done. Look what I've added to my game. And there's a danger in that. Quite obviously, there's a danger in that. And that's really what Brad has to contend with. That's the face of how we're going to have to fit all these pieces together. These guys working on things and now having to meld that in, and not having people, take their own game and try to force things. And Tommy kind of looked at Tatum as a guy who was doing that Friday night. I would agree with him. I thought there were parts of tonight, a lot of long twos that really weren't there. But then he had that stretch after that lay-in and after
the second quarter when he was just dropping them down.
And the 3-pointers were just, and it's like, okay, make that adjustment, Tatum. That's now you've got to see that. And I think he will, but there's a cohesion there that's lacking, and they just have to rebuild it. I think there's some early signs there. I think they're trying to get Gordon Hayward back in. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, the cohesion is still there for that young group that finished out the end of last season.
Yes,
and you see it the minute Terry comes out, because when Terry's out there with Kyrie and Hayward, he's still kind of got it, but that confidence, he knows that he's supposed to defer a little bit there. And, I remember he took a 3-pointer that he front rimmed, but when he was out there with Brown and Tatum and they were doing their thing, he wasn't front rimming anything. Everything was splash, splash. And the thing that he also does, they're two totally different styles, him and Kyrie. But one thing that should work really well with Terry running that second unit is the way that he does attack, and he gets around screens and then gets into the paint. And that threat is how they're going to prevent the opponent from just parking out beyond the perimeter and trying to stop all the 3-point barrages. They got into trouble with this over the last 3 years, pre-Kyrie, pre-Hayward, pre-Tatum. They would just sit there and try to shoot their way through games. Even with this big lead, they would continue to try to shoot their way through that game, and that's what let the opponents in. They have to threaten the paint. They have to do it consistently, and they really haven't. They've even had playmaking with Evan Turner coming off the bench and been able to kind of push it into the paint and push it back out, but not the actual threat to score at the rim that they have with Kyrie. And clearly Terry has that now too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and yeah, you're right. I mean, the amount of confidence, first of all, the amount of confidence Terry's playing with right now is off the charts. He always has had confidence, but over the last year and a half, but it's off the charts when he goes in there. And first of all, let me just say, I love the new sneakers. I thought it's really brave of Terry to wear Air Ronald McDonald's out there. I thought that was pretty great with the big red and the yellow. It's great. I like him. I'm not, no slight intended, but he's playing with this level of confidence right now that is just evident, and you can tell he has not skipped a beat from May. He's not taking
it's the year 3
what
leap,
happened
right?
in Eastern Conference Finals. He's not taking that to heart. You're right. And he's taking that. It's the year 3. And he's like, look, I'm ready to cash in. Right. And I think that you're right.
But it's not even just about cashing in. He's not cashing in for the money. He's cashing in on the amount of work that he's put into his game. And you go back and look at that draft class and remember how much scrutiny Danny took for drafting him. Go back and look. He's easily in the top 8. In my opinion, in that draft class, he's easily in the top 8, and he deserves an opportunity to start for a team. I know he got into it on Twitter a little bit Sunday morning, not into it, but we had this kind of discussion, and I threw it out tongue in cheek, like, yeah, we know how much Danny loves Terry. Maybe Kyrie goes at a deal for, Karl Anthony Towns, right? And yeah, I know. I'm just it is tongue in cheek. I think they're very happy with Kyrie, and I think they intend for him to stay. But, before this game even happened, just watching the first half of the first game and watching that confidence and remembering Terry on the Super Bowl Sunday game that I went to with my son and my parents, and remembering just his performance down the stretch in Kyrie's absence, and just thinking to myself, it's going to be a travesty for me to watch Terry emerge if it's on another team as a starter, and then just grow into, not necessarily, like, nobody's saying he's going to become Russell Westbrook, but just grow into a solid and entertaining and fun player. Like, this is the kind of guy you want to root for. Just his whole personality, his whole demeanor, his style of play, everything about him. It would be very, very sad to see him, launch his career in year 4 with another organization, especially because Danny spotted him out of the crowd and did receive so much criticism. Before we jump into that, I do want to remind everybody, follow Celtics Stuff Live on Twitter at CSL_tweet live. You can follow me at CSL_Justin. John is at CSL_Duke, and the entire CLNS Media Network is at CLNS Media. Go to Facebook.com/CLNS fans and download the CLNS Media app for iOS and Android. Simply search CLNS Media in your app marketplace. Also, the YouTube channel, phenomenal video this season. It's definitely high definition. You go to youtube.com/CLNS Media. You're going to get full-length locker room interviews. You're going to get the Garden Report. You're going to get the round table. You're going to find us here on Celtic Stuff Live on our own channel there. Lots of phenomenal content at the YouTube channel, youtube.com/CLNS Media. And you can poke fun at me a little bit because I'm typically, I don't know why, but I'm sunburned all the time on this camera. So you can go and jump on the bandwagon and make fun of Red Face Podcaster. So John, I want us to take a step back. I know everything, it's going to seem like, at least for the next few weeks, every road is going to lead to Rozier. I'm telling you, it's kind of like what we did with Smart, but it's going to happen. Every conversation we have on this show for a while, I could just feel it funneling back to Terry. So we'll take a break from Terry for a second, but I know we're going to continuously come back to him. I want to start with just the starters. And you're right, a lot of rust there. They give Al Horford the night off in game 2. Wise decision to do that. And then your boy Aaron Baines gets to start. So there's close to the lineup that you were thinking would be the starting lineup. But I'll say, see how I did that? I just made him your guy. I love Baines, just not as a starter. I'll say, Hayward, especially the playmaking. Imagine if we had that last year.
Yeah.
Imagine if they were healthy. I mean, as rusty as he is, and there are lapses on defense that I do think just come from like lateral motion and reaction time, that just because he hasn't played in a while. But, he had a nice block and he hustled down the court. So it's still there. It's not gone from the ankle injury. And the shooting, it just doesn't quite have that lift and that crisp shot. And that's because he's shooting in the flow of the game versus doing set shots. All of that's going to come back. And when it does, I think it's going to be pretty insane.
I think we're going to look back at tonight and look at that chase down block, which apparently he hasn't done at all since the injury. So this is the first time. And that was instinctive. That was, I'm going for the ball. I'm going to get it. And I'm knocking away from mine. He wasn't even going full speed when he went up for it. And he lands on the left ankle. He landed on that left foot. I think that's going to be something that he's going to be able to build that confidence from. And I think we can all say the athleticism is going to be there. Like when he can do chase down blocks from behind, okay, let's not worry about the athleticism. Let's just try to see if he can get back that feel and touch. That's the piece where it's clear he's trying to get it back, but I can tell a huge difference. I don't know about you, but I can tell a huge difference between even Friday to Sunday. With Sunday, he looked like he was engaged. Shots weren't going down. Not everything was completely there. He felt like 80%.
Yeah, but the rebounding,
Friday.
all of that.
More absolutely. So on Sunday was much more of the Gordon Hayward I think we're going to see, or headed in the direction of the Gordon Hayward we're going to see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you're right. Just his involvement in rebounding, everything in Sunday night, he was definitely more comfortable. And they're managing his minutes. They're keeping him right around 21, 22. I think conditioning is definitely a factor for him too. Conditioning a huge factor. So, Kyrie's rusty too. Like he's working it into the paint and he's got the dribbling and, I don't think, clearly he's 100% healthy. We don't have anything to worry about, but there are moments and I think it's just the chemistry, but I do feel like Kyrie could facilitate more for others. And I don't know if it's because, they're subbing in a lot with Terry and they're kind of sharing ball handling duties and whatnot, but that is something to keep an eye on, or maybe they were trying to defer some of that, to Hayward, just to get the ball in his hands because they knew his shot wasn't going to be perfect. But I remember at the start of last year, Kyrie was just a phenomenal distributor. And as we got into December, before the injury and everything, he started having to take over on the offensive end because it just wasn't happening. They had to start using him the same way that they used Isaiah Thomas. And it was kind of unfortunate. And I felt like for a lot of the rest of the time, he really got taken away from being a distributor for that reason. The whole team kind of got out of it. And I'm concerned about it to start this year. I really want to see, the facilitating distributor Kyrie. But he's more off the ball than he's been in most of the time he played last year too. Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you think it's just kind of early preseason stuff?
No, I think it's a really good question. I don't know. I really don't know how that's going to work. I think in part it's Kyrie trying to find himself and find his own balance. It's the competing interests of those young guys playing together. It's trying to fit Gordon in. I think there's a lot of moving pieces there and as the point guard, you're the guy who has to meld them all together. And unfortunately, if Gordon Hayward, if one of Gordon Hayward or Kyrie are in that spot, I don't think we're having the conversation because, well, they're going to work on it. But there's so much going on there. I think it's just really hard to gauge. And I think there were times, certainly, he looked electric tonight. And I think that will continue. I don't know. I'm just not really sure what to expect from Kyrie. At what point is he going to want to distribute? I mean, he talked about this summer a lot about how he likes to get his points and then really create for other people. But there's so much that's disjointed. The calls, I mean, there's a lot of fouls and, touch fouls. And
the flow of the game got disrupted a lot.
It's hard.
Way.
Yeah.
That point
it's
of
really
emphasis
hard.
stuff is ridiculous. And what I think is funny is Scal explained it, and we'll go to our commercial break in a second, and maybe we can leap back off of this. But Scal explained it as that they're basically trying to reduce the amount of physical contact. So it's almost like the whole point of emphasis is to reduce the number of injuries that happen before everybody's in condition because they shorten preseason. So they're keeping everybody sort of in check with that physical nature of the game that everybody loves by the time we hit January. And boy, doesn't that explain that January doldrum that happens, because the fouls are slowing the game down. They're kind of reducing the physical nature. But by the time they open it up at the beginning of December, no wonder that adjustment wears everybody down. You hit that January time frame and you can kind of see there's that mid-season, like people say mid-season form. And I want to say, mid-season form is more like all-star break, which isn't really mid-season. It's final third coming down the stretch. The mid-season form is like, dude, I'm beat up and I'm tired, and we're only halfway there and I've got to get over this mental hump. That's what I kind of feel, like that's all about. We'll come back and talk about that a little bit more. But first, I want to tell you about 1 in 100 Boston sports fans. Do you want to get killer seats to see your favorite team for the price of a beer or a large pizza? How about that? Tired of paying for all the inflated markups from brokers or last-minute convenience charges just so you end up paying courtside prices for nosebleed seats? Well, then go to 1 in 100. That's ONEIN 100.co. Feeling lucky? Try it out now. There's no other place online that's doing online raffles to win tickets to events. It's a totally new way to score tickets to your favorite events and a new way to score Boston Celtics tickets. The cost to potentially score them with 1 in 100 is a fraction of the actual ticket price. Score a pair of tickets for less than the cost of beer. Like I said, your first raffle ticket is free after signing up. The experience of using 1 in 100 is extremely fun and exciting as well, from picking your lucky number to feeling the potential of potentially scoring premium tickets. So if you're feeling lucky, try it. 1in100.co. That's ONEIN 100.co. All right, John. So maybe leap off on that point of emphasis. I thought it was interesting that they talked about it. It was also kind of funny to hear Abby take a shot at Tristan Thompson during the game as well. But I just think that, I still don't like it. And I mean, Hayward having 5 fouls, and several of them were just like ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you're trying to get these teams are trying to get flow, trying to get an offensive rhythm to themselves. I mean, both teams. This isn't a Celtics where they're playing one way or what have you. But you got a new coach in Charlotte. He's trying to establish a style of play. Looks great. It looks like they've really got something going there. And Bridges looks great. Monk seems like he's found kind of the type of player I think we expected coming into last year. They really look, promising. But how much can you really learn when you stop play every 15 seconds because, someone's coming around a screen and trying to blow it up? And, how many touch fouls are they calling Hayward? It was just, it's not fun to watch. It's not, but I understand what they're trying to do. But, if in the end of the day, just as Scal said, they're going to back away from it when it really matters, what's the point to begin with? I mean, either you call it that way or you don't call it that way. I understand the idea for points of emphasis and trying to take things out of the game that aren't helpful.
But it should be an adjustment at the beginning, and it should be consistent the rest of the way.
Absolutely.
That's what just blows my mind. NBA officiating is seriously the most inconsistent and creative art form I've ever seen in sports. I mean, people want to talk about, baseball, but there's something about calling, balls and strikes in baseball that was just sort of like part of the game. And so that's fine. The instant replay in football, I think it's necessary. Every play is so critical. But in basketball, you should just call the game evenly. And if you get a couple wrong, it just is what it is. And if you're going to call it a certain way, it can't be different in the fourth quarter, and it can't be different the second half of the season. It's got to be the same point of emphasis. I get it. It's hard in that game with so many calls being made to be consistent 100%, but you shouldn't intentionally change it up.
Right. And that's what's going on is they're trying to, push these new things through. I mean, there's a lot of new rules that I appreciate. I like the 14-second reset of the shot clock as opposed to the full 24 on something that hits the rim. I like that. I like the fact that they've tweaked the clear path foul rule, which I think was really a dumb thing and something where
100%.
People were just hugging people, and it was taking away the flow of the game. This is one where I understand. Again, I like what they're doing, but you got to call it the same way in October that you call it in June, and that may be frustrating, but people will adjust. You're not going to adjust if you know they're going to not call it by the time you get to January. So why bother?
People are just going to end up taking the fouls and playing the way they want to play anyway.
Right.
There's no point of the emphasis if you're not expecting people to absorb it long term. Because why not have 5 fouls in preseason? And, especially a deep team like the Celtics, that's not necessarily a bad thing to go deep into the bench early in the year, especially if they can get wins and the other teams are not as deep and wind up taking all the fouls and their guys are in trouble. They've got 3 fouls by halftime. And, imagine if they did that to Kemba Walker Charlotte's going to be in trouble if Kemba Walker's got 3 fouls heading into every halftime, right? The only problem there is he doesn't play defense, so it's not really a worry.
That's a big help. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Kemba because there was a lot of times when, whether it was Hayward or Smart had Kemba, on their back and ready to post him up. For some reason, the Celtics weren't finding them. I'm not sure if that was a point of emphasis, kind of to steal that for a different purpose.
Is that going to be the title of the show?
It's going to be like
the point of emphasis show.
Point guard of emphasis. I mean, we talked about Rozier.
Now we're back to Terry. See,
we talked about Terry. Now we talked about Kyrie and stupid rules. Point guard of emphasis. There's our title. We don't have to spend 5 minutes worrying about it at the end of the show, Justin.
Yep,
on International Podcast Day. Here we go.
Yeah, you know what? We should do a little shout. You and I have been at this since 2005? Is that when we started? 13? 2004 maybe? Might have even been 04 was the first draft night show. I'm not sure, but
yeah.
I might have done Killer Crossover that first year. It might have been 03 to 04 and then this. But either way, we've been at this, 13 years or so. And I didn't realize until you told me that as we record this on Sunday evening after the Celtics second game against the Hornets, that it is International Podcast Day.
Right.
I don't know who chooses those things, but cool. Kudos to us for sticking it out this long.
For the UN of podcasters, we salute you. Thank you. It's crazy. No, yeah, it's been a long time, and everyone's got a freaking podcast now. I mean, honestly, I hate to go on a bit of a rant here, but like,
I just remember when it was
everybody
like we
needs
were
the
one of the
freaking
few people.
podcast.
Yeah.
Turn around and now you don't have to tell people, oh, I listen to podcasts or I have a podcast. Everyone's got a podcast. It's like enough already.
Just
We
so
got enough podcasts.
Admittedly, today I'm doing it in my parents' spare bedroom. So, like, I'm visiting family in Maine. That was the one that we used to always get. Oh, yeah, like Wayne's World, were you in your parents' basement on cable access, right? Like, that was the early joke about having a podcast.
Yeah, right. Like monkeys might fly to my butt. I mean,
swing.
swing.
That's some old reference right there.
Yeah. Again, that tells you how long we've been doing this because those references were not dated when we first started doing this. So that's the other piece of it. But
most of the people listening to this don't even know
no idea.
Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody.
So they missed out. They really missed out. Yeah, but and they're gonna have a Queen movie coming out this fall, so maybe there'll be a resurgence of Bohemian Rhapsody. Let us hope.
We digress.
They can sing along in the car just like we did back in the day.
I legitimately did that before the movie came out. Exactly. I got to think a lot of people did.
Absolutely, yeah. That was my favorite movie by far back in the day. I mean, this is definitely an off-season conversation, but hell, we're 2 games in. I mean, we're gonna break down Brad Wanamaker for God's sakes. I mean,
no, see, that's the whole thing. It's like you got to give them time to get settled in.
Exactly.
And then you've got all these end of the bench guys that we're never going to see unless we're going to go to Portland and catch games with the Red Claws. And the only other thing to really talk about is I am a little pumped to see us play against Philly. The rematch there, plus the fact that I live in Pennsylvania and, all the neighbors are Philly 76ers fans. And I went to the one game the Celtics lost to Philly in the postseason last year with a buddy of mine who bought us tickets. There's definitely every time they play, I kind of get a little mini amped. And even if it is a preseason game, we've got 2 slated against them before we head into the regular season, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, in the preseason?
Yeah.
No, we play the Cavs.
Oh, it's the Cavs. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Cavs. So it's game 2 is Philly, correct?
Yeah. Game one of the regular season is Philly. Oh,
game 2 is Toronto. See, I got the schedule all messed up. I'm like front rimming like Hayward right now. I'll be back into regular season form very soon.
You're front rimming like Jason Tatum was until he started to get going there in the second half.
That's right. Well, Tatum, so do you want me to talk about League Pass?
Oh,
I'm going to give him a shout. I'm going to give him a shout. I was super pissed. I was like, really? The first game is on NBA TV and I'm going to get blacked out? But sure enough, first thing Saturday morning, it opened up. And usually I've got to wait 3 days. So I'm actually going to back up a little bit and say maybe it will be different this year. So I started to get a little spun out, but by Saturday morning I had recovered. So, I could George Costanza this topic. It's still there. We never know what's going to happen. You know how I get during the year when I start trying to watch on League Pass. But so far, I don't mind being able to watch the next day. It's just nobody wants to watch a game 3 days later. They've already played another game. Right. That's the issue. Or I shouldn't say nobody wants to, but I legitimately don't have time. I'm going to watch the other game that they're now playing. So next day, next morning, I'm okay with that. So we'll table that. But I'm due for a League Pass complaining session at least once or twice, maybe 5 times throughout the year. So who knows? Maybe they've solved the issue.
I'm not hopeful. I got to be honest. I'm not hopeful. On that note, though, I will say I'm currently trying to work out a scenario where I can listen to the audio broadcast and sync it up with the TV broadcast. I'm trying to find a way to do this without spending sums of money.
You want to Sean Grandy your TV?
I want to Sean Grandy my TV so that during the 30 national games the Celtics have, a good number of which will be on ABC specifically, I want to avoid Mike Breen and Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson to the greatest practical extent. I want to avoid those three awful people, and especially where we're looking at a potential deep run in the playoffs here in May and June. I just can't do it anymore. I want Sean. I want Granny and Max in my life.
We need, if you pull that off, we need you to go full Jerry Maguire and write the thesis and put it out on Twitter so that everybody can replicate your success. Even if even if it's only 80% successful, you got to go at 80% on this one. That's such a no-brainer for every Celtics fan.
Reddit, Twitter, we're going to put this together. We're going to make this happen. First of all, it's a complete it's foolish that we're forced to listen to national broadcasters. It's foolish. We should have a choice of listening to whatever feed we want to. I mean, they do this in other leagues. They do this with college football national championship. They do it with the college basketball national championship. You can tune into certain channels to get the right feed. They should be able to do this where you can just, boom, okay, I get the Celtics feed. Boom, I get the Warriors feed, or the national feed. That's all they got to do. All they got to do is type, kind of tap in that radio. I understand there's
reasons why they can't do it. Tap it in. What's the matter? You don't like my home?
Just tap it in. Well, we're waiting.
Great movie.
So that's even older, Paul. There. Anyway, Ruby reference, but.
We pretty much spun everything out of Saturday Night Live. That's the era we grew up in. There were two things that we watched when we were kids. It was Saturday Night Live and the Celtics, right? And that mid to late 80s, that's what all your influences, sports and pop culture. That's where it all came from.
No question.
All right, John, we're going to wrap up the show, but I will say this. We have a game against the Cavs on Tuesday. Then there's kind of a bigger gap. They don't play again until Saturday. But then there's a gigantic 10-day gap before we have opening night against the 76ers. But really, it's only about 2 weeks away. So we get two more games in the next week, and then we have essentially 2 weeks to opening night. They'll have 2 nights off before they then play the Raptors. So a shortened preseason in some ways. So what does that mean? We've got 2 more shows after this before we actually see a regular season game. So hopefully the Cavs will give us some more insight, but that 10-day gap is going to be tough. I just want to say that right now. It's we're all going to be starved looking for information after 4 preseason games and trying to figure stuff out, and we're going to have no idea what we're going to get on opening night.
I know it's such a tease right now. We're going to give you a whole bunch of basketball, and it's almost real, and it's live, and here they are, and they're in your face, and then we're going to rip it away from you for over a week and a half, and that's just it's painful. It's just
it's almost like it's just about conditioning, and then they take 10 days off to actually get it together. All right, here's some basic stuff. Do your best with it, but know that this is how it's going to kind of feel. Get in condition, get your legs underneath you. And then we're going to spend 10 days, sort of kind of closing it up a little bit, really working our offensive sets, figuring out our rotations on defense. And then we're going to hit the regular season. So this is a little early, and probably this should be 2 shows from now, but I want to wrap on this one quick prediction and then we'll close it out. The last couple of years, they've gotten out to hot starts. Do you think that they're going to, against all odds too, right? So do you think they'll get a fairly hot start this year? I guess 2 years ago, it was kind of like a 500 start and then they took off. But do you think they're going to, kind of put it up there pretty fast, or do you think this chemistry stuff is going to kind of linger for a little bit?
When you look at tonight and you look at Friday night, it's hard to say there's a trend line where you're thinking, oh yeah, by the time you get to the end of October here and this coming out on October 1st. So, 31 days from now on Halloween, they'll all have it figured out. But a month is a really long time. And you remember, these guys haven't even been practicing really for a week together. I know there's been, pickup games and whatnot, but that's a long time, you know. Having said that, though, the Celtics have I think, a really tough schedule. Probably one of the tougher schedules to start the season, between the start of the season and say Thanksgiving as a kind of a random date. I don't think they're going to get out to the hot start. I think they'll be good. I think they'll be, one of the better teams. I think they'll be a really good team, but I think they're not going to hit their stride until you get to January, February. I think that's when they're really going to start to hit their stride as a team. I still think they're on pace for 60 wins. I still think they're going to be a plus 60 win team. And we'll go through some predictions probably in a bigger sense here, either next week or the following week right before the season starts. But
yeah, we're just setting the table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not Thanksgiving yet. We can't
Yeah.
feast. We're just, it's like, oh, okay, I see.
If I'm
the tablecloth,
right. You got 7 games in the month of October. And you got Philly, Toronto, OKC, and Detroit's in there twice. I would say if they went 5-2 in there, that's a good start to the season. 5-2, I'd be happy with. 4-3, I'd take.
5-2 is great. Yeah,
5-2 is pretty good. Yeah,
I think if they start out the season above, 650 as a winning percentage, or I would consider that a hot start and very successful.
Okay. Well,
and you're 5-2. You're like what, hovering right around that line.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a question we're going to be asking ourselves a lot: is how super teamish are they? Are they good or are they a super team? To me, 5-2 isn't super team. 5-2 is pretty good. They're in the mix. Let's see what happens. 6-1 super team. 7-0 super team. That's
9-1. You're winning at a 900 clip to start out the year when you're a super team.
Crazy.
Because you got it together and you're coming out on fire and you're making a statement to the league. Mm-hmm. That's what super teams do. That's what Houston did last year, although they didn't make it to the finals, right? So that's there's that there too. But all right, that's going to do it. Yeah, exactly. But there were injuries there. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's show. The broadcast will be available on demand on the CLNS Media mobile app. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at CSL_Justin. John is at CSL_Duke. Heartfelt thank you to everybody for tuning in. Remember that you can help support the show by subscribing to Celtic Stuff Live on iTunes and Stitcher. We'd love it if you gave us a rating and a review because your feedback is important to the show. For staff writer Samuel Elias, executive producer Larry H. Russell, the founder of CLNS Media, Nick Gelso, and my co-host John Duke, I'm Justin Poole, and thank you for listening to this week's edition of Celtic Stuff Live.
Celtic Stuff Live.